Inside the 18 live from the virtual United Soccer Coaches Convention for the final day of the convention. I'm Michael Magid. Joined with me, as always, the czar of the virtual background, the one and only Omar Zeenni, known as Pro GK Academy, and 99 World Cup winner Saskia Webber. I'm sorry I just said that like that. And 99 World Cup winner Saskia Webber.
Yeah, you know, I'm not Pro GK Academy.
I'll take your title any day.
The reason we have that lovely background right behind the one and only Omar Zeenni is because this is the first ever crossover episode between Inside the 18 and the Keeper Institute. And if you guys are fans of the Total Soccer Show and the Cooligans, and you're saying, wow, I've heard of crossover episodes before, did you just steal that from them? I will say absolutely yes, we did just steal the concept from them. But you know what? Sometimes when you see great things like great coaches do, we grab them and we make them our own. So that's what we're doing right here. So joined with us, guys, for this part one. Part two will be out on TKI's feed. Are the one and only Tori Corsaro from TKI. Which that I'm not going to lie, Tori, your last name could be a little bit of a mouthful right there for me. It was a tongue twister. And of course, Jillian Loyden, founder of TKI. Tori, I guess I should also say strength and conditioning coach for TKI, host of the Keeper Institute podcast for TKI, and a lot of other incredible things that you do for TKI. And then Jill is she's the face of TKI.
And what is it, botanist or arbitor? What is it? The plant thing. Sorry.
Oh, the plant. Yeah. Yeah, Tori, what's your botany title?
The botanist.
Plant mom extraordinaire.
There you go.
Don't shake your head at me.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm really excited about this, guys. We got two really cool topics that we're going to be talking about. They're kind of going to be feeding into each other. Like I said, first part is going to be on the Inside the 18 feed. Part two is going to be on the TKI feed. For some people out there, some of the insiders maybe in other countries who might not be as familiar with TKI and the Keeper Institute, Jill, since you did it last time you were on the air, we're going to let Tori do it this time. Tori, why don't you explain what TKI is all about and the podcast?
TKI is the Keeper Institute. We're located in South Jersey, and we're an all-encompassing goalkeeper training facility. And we have the pleasure of working with goalkeepers all the way from ages 8 to pro. We focus not only on just the physical and the technical, tactical side of the game, but also we like to put a strong focus on mentality and character and making better goalkeepers and better people.
I mean, honestly, the better people thing is actually what's really cool about it, because I think one of the really awesome things about your guys' podcast is that you really do focus on the people, and not especially just the people in regards to the goalkeeping community, but the people at TKI and kind of what makes that tick. And Jill, I think that's something that's kind of, I don't want to say it's exclusive to TKI, but it's something that really you all have really owned, is that community relationship with TKI.
Yeah, I mean, it's all, at the end of the day, it's all about development and person and player development. And in order to do that, you need to have great relationships. And, just like you do on the field, you need to have great relationships. And I think that's where trust is established and where people really can develop the most, when that trust they have with their coach.
And I think, Saskia can definitely attest to this in regards to obviously growing up in New Jersey, is that there is a real string. I mean, I only spent 4 months living in that area, but there's a real strong sense of community. And what I'm trying to say is that it's not a surprise that so many great goalkeepers come out of New Jersey. Saskia.
No, I mean, I think that whether you want to say it's in the water or whatever, I think it's, you can go back to, Tony Meola, you go to Timmy Howard and so on and so forth. And obviously multiple female goalkeepers. I'm not going to ring my own bell. But I think that what you have is you have a group of coaches and a lineage that passes down. And that's why the state constantly it's the mecca for goalkeepers in the United States, period. Because those coaches, whether it's Blage, whether it's Jill, whether, whoever, they stay home. Sorry, I love you, New Jersey. I'm in California. But they keep teaching, and they keep moving it forward. And so it's a proven success, and it's going to keep going that way. Period.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to add too, like for Saskia and Joe, I'm sure you guys, I mean, that's something that we know. I noticed here in the off season when I was, playing in the college system here, a lot of like guys who I knew who are in the same conference as me, they were all playing for the same summer teams in SoCal, and just being on the same field as them and kind of wanting to compete, and then also understanding that we're going to see you later in the season. It had a little bit of banter back and forth. So, I mean, for you guys, do you guys feel like that's one of the reasons and kind of catalysts of why you guys are so successful in that area, because there's so much competition and everybody is either learning off each other or competing with each other?
That's a good question. I don't know. I think it stems a little bit from the fact that we have 4 seasons here in New Jersey. And, Sas, when you were growing up, you didn't play soccer all year round. You played other sports.
Oh, I was recruited for college for lacrosse.
Right.
Well. Yeah.
Right. So we're, in the winter, it's terrible. And so I grew up playing basketball to stay fit, and
Absolutely.
softball and playing in the street and whatnot. But I think that, part of the reason why goalkeepers are so successful from this area is because we didn't just get into goalkeeper training 12 months of the year and played other sports and worked on, physical literacy of movement and whatnot.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, I think that must play.
I like that.
Yeah, I think that must play a little piece into why so many goalkeepers from this area.
I absolutely agree with you. And I've talked to Mike about that. He's asked, and he knows that I'm a multi-sport athlete, and that is how we grow up in New Jersey. I mean, from soccer to lacrosse to swimming, basketball. I can't shoot, but I'm a great defender. I agree with you 100%. Like, and when it comes to goalkeeping, like all those other sports that you can do, just play into it, and it keeps you fresh at the same time. I mean, 12 months of the year playing goalkeeper, that's brutal. If you can take a pause and play basketball or lacrosse or like whatever, if you could swim and take a different like toll on your body and train differently, different muscle movements, eye-hand coordination, everything, it just keeps you fresh for when you get back on the field.
Yeah. And I want to ask Tori this, in regards to the fact, obviously, that you run strength and conditioning and all of that, is that you've probably recognized, and I know you've been a very big proponent in regards to goalkeepers learning different movements, so they don't become robots. There's nothing worse than when you get a goalkeeper and you realize all they can do is move in certain patterns because that's all they've done in their life. And I think earlier today, Eric Steele at the convention, he was talking about the fact that, unconventional movements, Peter Schmeichel, unconventional movement, but the fact that he was an athlete allowed him to make plays that other goalkeepers wouldn't make because it had been so ingrained in them to do things a certain way. So is that something that you guys really strive for at TKI, is to give young goalkeepers that freedom to learn how to move?
Absolutely. I think from a strength and conditioning point, it's like, okay, if these kids don't want to play other sports, because I feel like we run into that a lot now, like I don't want to play other sports or I don't want to play other positions, we still encourage play on the field, give us that. And if that's not the case, then okay, you need to maybe get involved in some kind of like other play program, whether that be like speed and agility. I use air quotes because like you don't have to have a class just for that, or like they want to get involved in strength conditioning. If a 12 or 13-year-old comes to us and is like goalkeeper only, then I would probably advise that. So they're getting these different kinds of movements and whatnot. But when it comes to like our kids and in terms of like a session design, one of my biggest things is how can we lay foundations so that a little bit later down the road, we can encourage creativity and like a figure it out mentality. Like I posted something the other day on my coaching account of a kid. He just did something, not that I told him to do it. It wasn't part of my objective. He just whipped it out. And it was like, wow, you just took the creativity and you pushed it to the limits based off of all these other things you've ever learned. And I think that like, that's one of those things that shows me that a kid's really learning and growing and starting to like think autonomously.
Nice.
And I think one of the really cool things that what you're just saying right there, Tori, is, and obviously what we want to talk about kind of this first step before we kind of go into the second part, which is going to be the specific super strengths of a goalkeeper themselves, but is what makes a goalkeeper great and a positive, basically, for lack of a better term, influence on their team, because I think this is something that I think a lot of people haven't really discussed, is that there's specific things, not just on the field, but off the field, that a young goalkeeper can bring to their team that maybe not every outfield player can kind of bring, And so what I kind of wanted to start with is like, Jill, are there any specifics that you kind of would say are things that a goalkeeper brings that really help their team? And it doesn't even have to be tangible.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I've been mulling over this for a couple weeks now, thinking what's like one thing that a goalkeeper needs. And for me, it's control. Control in every way, sense, and form of the word. So controlling the game, controlling how to organize their defense, controlling their emotions, controlling their body, controlling their decisions, controlling as much as they possibly can. I think a lot of people want to talk about final actions and did they kick save, did they dive, how did their dive look, but we don't really talk about the control it takes to actually get into the proper position and get into the proper shape so that you can execute those final actions. So for me, I think the best goalkeepers in the world are the ones that have the most control over themselves, teammates, game, the ball, all of it.
I absolutely love what you just said right there. And then Omar, actually, that was something that back when we had the Franz Hoek episode where Franz Hoek, basically gave us a 2-hour webinar, which was phenomenal, is you mentioned something in regards to Ederson. And you were saying that, Ederson's whole point of view, his whole goal was to control the play, control the rhythm of the game, all of that. And like, can you kind of elaborate on that? Because I think what Jill's saying right there really feeds into that.
Yeah. And I think, one thing I did want to bring up is, I'm a big fan of Jill's personal account too. I know TKI posts her stuff. I know, Jill, you posted something recently where it was like, working with combination and having the goalkeepers get creative by breaking the lines. And one thing that I mentioned to Franz, and I'll loop that all back together, is that, I was like, well, when Ederson puts his foot on the ball, he's controlling everything. The strikers are on hold, the wingers are on hold. They're waiting for his every move, and he's dictating everything. And then Franz hit me with, well, Omar, is he dictating it, or is the defensive team, are they letting him dictate, and then they react and they go 100 miles an hour, knowing that going towards him is going to be a lost cause? So then it made me think of, okay, that to me was something I didn't think of, but it also provides context as to the session that you ran, Jill. I saw the combination in between breaking the lines from one goalkeeper to the other is there's 2 layers now, right? It's as a goalkeeper, what am I doing to break the line? And then as a defender, what am I doing to almost show the goalkeeper that there's an opening here, and I'm going to close it by showing them there's an opening. Now we talk about, basketball and like on fast breaks, 2v1s, how can you show a lane that's open, and then obviously they think it's open, and you come and take it away. So for you, Joe, I kind of want to, bring that back to you guys. Is that something that you guys are doing in your sessions? Is multi-layer of, okay, we're going to allow the goalkeeper to think as a goalkeeper today, but at the same time, we want them to see what a defender is looking at or what a striker is looking at and taking away passing lanes so that they know when they do step back to the goalkeeper position, it's more of a holistic approach.
Yeah, that's a great question. So what you're referring to, that clip that you saw, was my youngest class and then my project. So they're like 10 and 11 years old, and they're so keen to play. They want to play. One thing that has not worked in this class, this project, is doing technical drills with lines, because they don't want to wait. They want to just play. And so everything we do, like that whole session, was exactly what you saw. It was playing with different constraints to get them to be creative with those constraints. So, we gave them an end zone, and if you played it through to a player in the end zone, then that person could not be defended and can go straight to goal. So they had to think. They weren't necessarily thinking, oh, what are the principles of in possession, penetrative passes? They were thinking, yeah, I'm going to get the player to the end zone, or I'm going to either play the ball to that player in the end zone, or I'm going to manipulate the defenders. I'm going to manipulate my opponents to bite on a slower paced pass to my teammate so I can get it back and then break pressure. And I think those small little games, they see different pictures, they see different angles of support. And of course, when they go into the goal, they're seeing it just from a different perspective, but the same principles of triangles, diamonds around the ball, opposite movements, playing through. So I think, for our younger kids, we're not teaching them a lot of technique. We're just putting them in scenarios with different constraints so that they can learn and see pictures.
Yeah.
I just love what you were just saying right there. I mean, Saskia, I know that's something that you've discussed in the past too, is that with a lot of these young goalkeepers, is that if you just put sessions designs together with certain, let's just say, obstructions or whatever, they'll figure it out. They'll figure it out. No, but they'll either figure it out or it won't work. But
Well, I mean, like,
as opposed to spoon feeding it, yeah.
No, but like even today, like, was it today or yesterday? But it was, when we were playing, one of my goalkeepers kept getting baited, and I'm not going to spoon feed this to her. Like, I'm going to let her figure this out. And how many times are you going to take 2 touches on a back pass and realize that the forward, Raylan, is baiting you, and that you're assuming that you have the time and you don't. And you've 3 times ran into problems. So, are you going to figure this out? And didn't in the first segment, didn't, to the point that at halftime or whatever you want to call it, we came over, we talked. I said, when are you going to figure this out? Like, you don't have the time you think you do. Raylan is baiting you. She's letting you think you have the time, and she's so fast, and you keep getting into trouble with a back pass or with anything. Like, no, I don't want to spoon feed people, but at some point you have to, you hope they figure it out. And if they don't, then, you have to point it out, and then we'll go over video and we'll I'll show her. But that's why I said you hope, you hope that they get, I keep doing the same thing, and I keep getting into trouble. So let me change this. Or are you going to try to say, and here's another thing you run into where, oh, I screwed that up. So let's say you took too many touches on a back pass and it ended up in the back of the goal. Let's just put it that way. It did. So now are you trying to prove to me that you know how to handle a back pass? So you're going to take 2 touches again? And I know that you know how to clear the ball. I know that you know how to handle the ball, but you're not assessing the situation. You're not realizing that so does Raylan, and that every time you take 2 touches, she's on top of you like this. She's letting you do that. And you don't prove it to me. Assess the situation in front of you. Realize what the other team is doing to you. I know you can handle a back pass. I know you can clear a ball, but that's not what the situation calls for, and you're falling right into their trap. Yeah. That is the education that's up here. That's what I'm looking for.
I want to say this. Yeah, go ahead, Omar.
No, I kind of want to ask Tori a question, because we're both on the younger side in terms of the coaching side. So we have experience, but for me at least, my patience is very not limited. This, Mike. Sometimes I'll try something and I want it to look good, and when it doesn't, you gotta
love watching Omar with those 5-year-olds. It's just such a great session.
No, but I think my question to you, Tori, is, that's kind of where I feel like I'm not struggling. I'm getting better at it, because I've had people point it out to me. But do you feel like there are certain times where you might be working with a younger group, and you want to have that kind of autonomy and freedom to do and be creative and do what you want, but sometimes a session may not be going the way you want it to go, and you kind of have to insert that little bit of patience just to kind of see it through. And then maybe you might not make that point today. You might make that on session 4 instead of session 1. And then have you had any studies like that? Have you been able to hold out longer than I have?
I mean, absolutely. I have learned patience through working with younger kids over and over again. And Jill can tell everyone this story as well as I could, but we were working with our youngest group, not the same she's talking about, maybe right before Christmas. And I came up with this game, and we were going to play this game, and it was going to be so much fun. And it was just a dodgeball type game. And I explain it, and the whole group gets it. They're excited, they're ready to go. And one little girl looks at me and she says to me, well, how do I get points? And I was like this. And I explained it again in a little bit different wording. And she's like, so how do they get points? And I was like, they get points like you get points like this. And she's like, well, when will they get their, and at this point, there's 11 other kids waiting to do this session.
Look at
So
Jill's
I
shaking
like,
her head.
I had to eat it. I like had to eat this. I was like, okay, 3, 2, 1, go. And I looked at Jill and Jill looked at me and I was like, and I haven't been stumped like that in so long, but it's like moments like that that continue to teach me. One, my way that I phrase things needs to be different for different kids because we're all different learners. And two, sometimes talking less is the most helpful thing that I can do in terms of feedback or communication or instruction, because then it kind of gives you that autonomy you want. They're going to interpret it. And if it's not the way that I meant it, do I like it? And maybe I keep it that way, or I wait, I let it run its course and I say, okay, but let's try it like this time.
Yeah.
You know,
Totally.
It's so literal. It's the funniest thing. Sometimes when you get a kid like that, you're like, why don't you go 5th in line and watch and figure it out by the time you get up to your turn?
Yeah, always learning. Always learning.
Parents are like, I'm never sending my kid to Saskia.
I think that's one of the things is, before we I want to kind of get back to this whole, assessing dangerous spaces thing, is that Tori, I was in a situation and I wish I had, the webinar from Matt Doyle on gamification from Birmingham City before I had tried to do this about a year ago or so. I did a rec clinic. Right. And I was like, well, rec clinic, I got to make it fun, right? I got to make games and stuff like that. But the problem is that the games that I made were based on goalkeeping elements that were unfamiliar to them. And so when I tried to run the games, it didn't register with them because they weren't familiar with the movements. They weren't familiar with those activities and stuff. And it was Omar, we've had this discussion before. It's just assuming that someone you're having a conversation with, like, when you talk to civilians and you just start saying goalkeeper jargon and you're like, oh, wait, you have no idea what I'm talking about. I could literally be speaking another language. Right.
Yeah.
So I think, getting kind of back to the tip of like what a good goalkeeper can do and a good goalkeeper coach is they can find a way to make something that is unfamiliar to somebody else make sense to them and make it universal. And Jill, I know that's something that you've been really strong about at TKI, especially in that foundational phase, is making sure that these kids, get what you're talking about.
I think when it comes down to it, I'd rather win ugly than lose pretty.
Absolutely.
I would rather my session be a disaster aesthetically and you're like, it doesn't work, it doesn't look good, and walk away and a kid is like, okay, I understand something a little bit different, or I see a picture a little bit different today. And you know what, the learning curve is nasty. When you're trying to change something, it doesn't look good. It doesn't look sexy. It doesn't look clean. It takes a long time to make change. But I think especially with our group is we try to establish principles of play that they can understand. And we try to focus on that one thing. So if we're working in possession, okay, the first thing that we teach is scanning, because how do you know what to do unless you are scanning? And typically kids only see pressure, right? And they have an emotional response to pressure. And so they just kick the ball out of bounds, or they might do something that they normally might not do if they weren't under pressure. And so just giving them that one principle and giving them feedback only surrounding that one principle can really help. And they might not get it in the first session, but they might get it in 4 sessions after you remind them about that and they work on it in a few different situations.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, that's also too, I think, Mike, before we can move on, but I think that's also one of those things that, I've struggled with when you think about the process of everything and then getting to where I'm at now. And I'm like, you shouldn't be able to figure this out. What are you talking about? Come on, it should be easy. And then at the same time, it's like, yeah, like Tori said, everybody learns differently. And we talked about it a few episodes ago, Mike, audibly, visually. And there are some kids too who just want to play goalkeeper more than others. And they're able to retain information because they go home thinking about goalkeeping, which I had a girl last week. She went home and was thinking about snowboarding. And I'm just like, okay, she, like in the session, she was like, hey, like, do you know where I can get a good snowboard? I'm like, do you realize that we're in this session right now? Like, why are you asking about why are you asking about snowboarding? You know what I mean? So in my head, it just constant reminders, and you start
You're
realizing
like, it's 85 degrees out.
Yeah, oh, she's that's what I bet. That's the interesting part as well. Is like the more experience you get, the more people you come across, and the more you understand that it was a process for us to get to where we are as coaches, and just an understanding of goalkeeping, that these kids need repetition. And then for us, it's just like, for me at least, just put the ego to the side, let them figure it out. And at the end of the day, if it looks bad on you, okay, but at the end of the day, they're learning how to be themselves and how to solve problems on their own, versus they make a mistake in the game and they go, all right, what was Coach Omar telling me about? Oh, shoot. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. I think that's important.
I think, sorry, don't mean
go ahead.
to interrupt. But I do think that, like, there's a difference between letting them figure it out and just giving them a blank canvas, right? And I think sometimes that's where people get it wrong, is they're just like, well, throw them into the fire and they'll figure it out.
God, no.
They'll sink or swim, you know? And I think it's important that we give them principles to play by. We give them ideas to employ, and then we can give them feedback on those things. And not, if you just try to, you know, bite off the whole thing, it's so overwhelming for these kids, where they can just pick up one or two principles here and there, and then give them creative freedom when they're, you know, when they're ready and have tried some different ways to solve problems.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Jill, I think also to add on to that point, I know we can move on, but I know I've seen on your board that you guys do before the kids come in, it's like, sometimes, not direct quote, but you will make mistakes today. Essentially, how are you going to recover from that? Do you feel like introducing that concept to the kids sometimes may throw them off, but also too, you as the coach or the person who's, you know, conducting the session, want to see who reads that and goes, okay, thanks. Like, I needed that to understand that I'm going to get better today, even with those mistakes. And other kids who are just like, no. You know, they step up to the plate and go, that's not going to be me. I'm going to take care of business today. Like, do you feel like there's two different people, and have you seen any reactions from that?
100%.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, right. Like, one of the biggest parts of goalkeeper development is environment, and they can't just come in expecting they're going to be 10 out of 10, because they're not going to get any better. And so we create an environment where everyone is stretched and everyone is going to get scored on. Everyone is going to make mistakes, and not that, like, they're okay with making mistakes, but they realize that it's part of their development and part of their plan, and that we think that they're, you know, have so much more potential that we're trying to stretch them to get to the next stage or the next level or the next progression of their journey. But like the arrival questions, that's what I think what you're talking about, Omar.
Yes.
We use two arrival questions before the kids come, and that helps prime their brain. Well, we think maybe it helps them prime their brain, but to get their head switched on to our intended outcomes for the session, so that they can already, like, we've had our Zoom call, they know exactly what we're doing. They come in, they have their whiteboards, they answer the questions. And sometimes the questions are, you know, a technical question, like, what's hardest about end-line service, or what's your favorite part about X, Y, and Z? And sometimes it's, how are you going to deal with mistakes today? Or how are you going to make your teammates better? And so we kind of gear those towards what the difficulty of the session will be. For example, end-line service, how are you going to deal with making mistakes today? Because you're going to get scored on 100 times.
You know, and one thing that I love about, first off, the thing that you do in regards to the, you know, you're going to make mistakes type of a thing, is that there's a couple things. One is that, you know, when Tori and I were kind of talking about, like, these positive traits that really make a goalkeeper, because you all can attest to this, you know, I mean, you've played at the highest of levels, is that what separates, you know, the goalkeeper who's starting in the match versus the one who's slightly behind might be something as very simple as, you know, they bring something out of the team that the other one doesn't in some capacity, you know? And I think one of the things about allowing mistakes and that having that safe space type of a thing is that it creates goalkeepers that are willing to assess danger and learn how to deal with that danger, rather than always going with a template decision on what to do. You know, because, you know, Tori, I'm sure you're very familiar with this, and you know, Caitlyn Sheridan is one of these who I think is absolutely fantastic at this. No two plays of Caitlyn Sheridan will be alike, because her movement off the ball is based on her assessing where the danger space is, and then because of that, it allows her to make a better play. You know, and Jill will probably be like, well, you know, that's taken months and months and months, but it's just something that I've just recognized.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, like Jill said, like you give them these foundations and it allows creativity. Like when you let a kid also know that it is okay to fail, and like you create that psychological safety of failure in your culture and in your environment, then failure becomes a lot less scary and a lot more of a stepping stone, I think. So like you said about Caitlyn, I mean, she's willing to take risks because she's practiced taking risks. She's willing to take risks because she's been put in situations before where she's gotten burnt. And she learned from those rather than like, okay, I'm not going to do that again. It's okay, I'm not going to do that in that situation, but it doesn't mean that Cruyffing someone on the goal line isn't a good decision. Just maybe I won't do it when they're 5 yards from me, something along those lines. Like I've watched Caitlyn take numerous risks in terms of in possession in particular that, you know, sometimes it pans out, sometimes it doesn't, but it never keeps her from trying it again.
Yeah, and I think fear, to be honest, Saskia, you know, we've talked about this a lot, and Omar, I know you literally did a whole podcast on this, you know, back in the day, you know, is really kind of one of those things that were like, if you're looking for a goalkeeper that makes their team great, they've got to not only not have fear within themselves, but exude that energy to their team, so their team doesn't have fear. You know, there's nothing worse than when there's a team that has fear that if anything happens, their goalkeeper's not going to be able to deal with it.
Yeah, but also too, I think a lot of times fear, for me at least, was like attributed to what if I make this mistake, what if I make that mistake, and I never really got a different perspective on what fear really meant and where it derived from, where it came from. And again, that's why I like what you guys do at TKI. I feel like you guys, as coaches, you guys read so many different books about psychology, sports psychology. You guys do a lot of reading on that, to not even just, you know, hey, you're going to make mistakes. This is what, like, not make mistakes, but this is probably going to be something that you might be afraid of. Here it is. You guys frame it in a different way using like catchwords or like words from different places, because you guys do this, you know, I think more deep reading than most coaches I know do. So that you're able to frame what fear means from a different perspective. And again, like Tori said, I keep mentioning it, but everyone learns and understands things from different ways. So the more information you know as a coach, and the more understanding you understand of sports psychology, the better you can frame and kind of not dumb down, but like allow them to comprehend it in a way where it's not so scary. It's not so, it's not just, yeah, that's the way I was, not so scary. So they can actually confront it, and now they have ways to combat it and actually get better from it.
Yeah. I mean, look, you know, one thing I will say right here is that, look, Saskia, you know, you've always said, you know, you're opinionated and, you know, that you're a big personality and everything like that. But honestly,
I haven't said that. You have.
Okay, I've said that. Fine, I've said that, and others have said that.
I'm kidding.
But I think that is a certain amount in regards to that type of an energy. And again, they were talking, you know, Eric Steele earlier today was talking about, you know, the different types of goalkeepers, the introvert, the extrovert, yada yada yada. You don't have to necessarily be an extrovert to exude confidence or to not have fear or whatever. But there is something to be said, and I've watched it when you coach, and I've watched it when, you know, in old clips when you played and everything like that, is that there was a confidence that even if you're wrong, you're going to commit, you know, and I think a great goalkeeper commits.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I think I think fear in goalkeeping is based on letting your team down, that goal getting scored and everything like that. And we find that goalkeepers, you might find a goalkeeper start hugging their line more. And, you know, when we talk about making mistakes and we talk about pushing that envelope, it's so you can find a mean of what, like if you're coming for a cross, what is your range? Like if you're coming for, the only way to try it is to fail. The only way to try it is to go too far, or, you know, or something like that. And then not go far enough, and then find that point. And, you know, Tony DeChico instilled that in all of us that trained with him and everything. Like, no, we have to push that envelope to find that middle range that finds where you're comfortable and where you're strong. You know, whether I'm shaking in my boots or wanting to throw up after fitness, act as if, you know, the presence that you've seen in me and the presence that I had was something, again, instilled by Tony and Blodge and those guys. And it was just like, you know, I'm always on my feet. I'm always standing up. I'm always got my shoulders back, my head held high, and exuding that positivity and that strength, no matter what's going on inside of me, to give off, and that'll pull me out of it as well, and to give it to my team. If I just let up a bad goal, or if I just did something, no, up, ball out, let's go. No matter what, even if I want to go cry in a corner after the game, like, it was still something that I had to put off me to exude to other people. And because the minute my head goes down, and the minute my energy goes down, and the minute I'm thinking about things, it's a cancer, and it'll just go through the whole team. And so, I learned that very early, and it's very important, but it's not an easy thing to get to. And not all goalkeepers can do that. And it takes a certain amount of mentality and mental toughness, and conversation and connection with your coaches and team and everything. It's a journey.
Jill, one thing that's really been fascinating right now is that as we've all kind of been talking here, is that one thing that hasn't really come up in conversation is technical foundation as one of these things that really makes or breaks a goalkeeper. And I used to think that as a young goalkeeper coach, oh my gosh, it's all about the technique. It's all about the technique and footwork and handling and clean. And look how clean this session looked and everything. Those goalkeepers are, and when I was a younger goalkeeper, I would misidentify goalkeepers for colleges and stuff like that when they're scouting, and be like, oh, you got to check out so-and-so. And I'd be like, well, here's some session tape. And then they're like, dude, have you seen him in a game? Have you seen this dude in a game?
Mm-hmm.
And Jill, I know you've been really big about that yes, technical foundation is great. We strive on technique at TKI, but it's the icing on the cake type of a thing. There's other attributes that we're looking for. And then if you have technique, that's when you can become a great goalkeeper.
Depends.
Can't hear you.
She's on mute.
Are you on mute, Jill?
What the heck? This is not my first Zoom call. Yeah, I mean, I think technique is important, but it's just part of the puzzle. It's not everything. We get to work with a lot of different goalkeepers at TKI, and more in terms of like our pros right now. We're working with some goalkeepers from Sky Blue, from Louisville, and they're all different. And some have strengths in technique, and some I'm like, listen, you're never going to be technical. So let's just be effective. So you're not going to catch that. You're not going to absorb that pace like someone else might. So let's just make sure we give up an effective rebound, or put this in an area where you can just bat it down and pick it back up, and that's totally okay. I think we need to get away from like this, what it has to look like and what it looks like for each person, giving them different options based on what their strengths are and what their areas of improvement are. It doesn't have to look one way. If you watch an American goalkeeper or a Spanish goalkeeper, they're going to do things different. But that doesn't mean that one way is right or wrong. I also don't think that we have to never do technical stuff, because there are circumstances where people are trying to make marginal gains that they have to do some technical work, and that's fine. But I think we need to step away from that being in people's minds as the most important thing you could do.
Yeah,
it's not. I'll say one goalkeeper flat out, Brian Ascuri. I love you, Bri. I love you. Not the most technically sound goalkeeper in the world, but God, the best athlete ever in the goal. And what she lacked in technique, like, you're not going to sit down and break Bri's saves down and be like, oh, listen, she wasn't attacking the ball. She wasn't, but she was making the save. And time after time after time again. And so, it is individual. You have to identify that. And it's not just one way. Oh, your body weight wasn't forward. Even, sometimes like in practice with UCLA, like Lauren makes a kick save and I'm like, I'll take it. Do you want me to break it down and tell you your body weight wasn't forward and this and that and the other? This was in tight space and you made a kick save. Great. I'm fine with it. It's out of the net. So, you have to, we've always said this, it's a gray area.
Yeah.
Love you,
I think
I do.
No, I know you do, but look, that's another thing right there. And that's a topic for another episode and everything like that. But, great goalkeepers have a strong sense of community with the other goalkeepers in their pool, in their program, in their team that they've worked with. The fact that that you and Bri have such a strong relationship is no, there's no illusion on why the 99ers were so successful. That type of a connection, that type of a community really makes for a strong goalkeeping core, regardless of who's playing and who's not, and yada yada yada. I want to kind of wrap up with this before we kind of move on to the TKI portion and everything, and that is athleticism. A lot of people, they say, oh, what makes a good goalkeeper great, and is an attribute that they can bring to the table, is a phenomenal athlete. Great. It's important to be, yes, being an athlete is helpful, right? The better an athlete you are, it definitely helps your ceiling. But Tori, you can attest to this. First off, there's different types of athleticism. And then second of all, if you may not have the same ceiling as somebody else in a certain area, you can make up for it in other ways, and you as a strength and conditioning coach, this for a fact.
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually perfectly leads us into our next topic, which is going to be all about super strengths and all about, or sometimes like what we call X factors of goalkeepers. So you're hitting the nail on the head with that, because every single one of us in this panel we have different strengths. I'm sure not a single one of us had the same thing that we were excellent at as goalkeepers. And maybe we had a few crossovers, but I mean, even Tim in his conversation earlier today at the convention, he was talking about how we don't just have to highlight those weaknesses as our only areas to fix. Like, you can continue to develop and build on your strengths to continue to make those what's so special about you. But you can definitely play into those things, make them better. There is different kinds of athleticism. So like, that's always an area, no matter who you are, that you could probably grow in, become stronger, increase your cardiovascular fitness. You could, unfortunately, I haven't figured out how to make myself taller yet, but I always wanted. You can definitely become quicker and increase your reaction time, acceleration, deceleration. So in terms of strength and conditioning, yes, like the floor is yours to be able to improve in those areas. And when it comes to the other things, I think that we all, yes, have different ceilings, but we can all tap into those by exploiting the little X's and O's.
Yeah. And I think one thing as we wrap up right here, Omar, you've even mentioned in the past, that there were a lot of goalkeepers you saw out there in your pool that were phenomenal athletes, and they just thought that was enough.
Oh,
because they thought that was enough, you surpassed them. I'm not saying you're a bad athlete, Omar, by the way. I'm not saying that in any way whatsoever. But you get what I'm saying, because maybe you were a little bit slower. Maybe you were getting, beat 5 times, getting chipped over in a game because you were looking at the ice cream truck
right now.
That's okay. He's going to bring it back to me in the TKI episode. So, but you get what I'm saying. You kind of get what I'm saying.
Yeah. I mean, you have to be a very well-rounded goalkeeper, and I think that's like we talk about holistic approach of goalkeeping. It can't just be you're a good shot stopper. It can't just be you're good at reading the game. Like, I was really good at reading the game. I mean, that was because I was slower when I was younger. So I was like, okay, the lazy thing. I always just quote my parents. I say, if you want something creative done, give it to a lazy person, and they'll figure out a way to do it. They'll figure out the laziest way to do it, and they'll make it happen. So that's kind of how I played goalkeeper as a young kid. We talk about it all the time. I used to get chipped from half field, and I used to get balls played over the top because my team played a high line, and I would always hug my line, and they would come at me one-on-one, and they would score. I'd probably lose 7-8-0 a game. But then I started realizing, man, I know I'm slow, so I need to figure out how to kind of manipulate the game so it doesn't like expose my weaknesses. So I think that was my ability to do that. But then that's where I stopped. I kind of let that be me, and I put my foot on the gas up until I was where I thought I was fit. And then I took my foot off the gas. I had my season, and I always say probably about like the 3/4 into the season, my body was breaking down. And so even though I was good technically and I was good in terms of understanding the game, physically my body was breaking down. So now mentally I'm more susceptible to injuries. I'm not feeling my instinctual self. I'm not feeling comfortable in my body. So all those little things don't allow me to exceed in the things that I've already exceeded in. Instead, those things that I excel in, they get diminished. So I think if you're a well-rounded person and if you have good nutrition, good physical attributes that you actually hone in on, and it doesn't have to be you're working, your max weight every single day during the season. Maintenance is extremely important, but you have maintenance on the things that you've worked on. So you hit a certain baseline and you try to keep it above that. And I'm sure Tori can attest to that as well. But I think that's where the education side of things really needs to get amplified. And I think, Tori, you guys are doing a great job at TKI, letting these kids know you're building that foundation now so that your body can thank you. And not even just building a foundation so you're like strong, it's so that you have the proper habits. I know Kaylee Collins, who just got drafted to Orlando Pride, I've worked with her for the last year, and she has a stretch routine. She gets there 45, like almost 30 minutes before every session. She has a stretch routine, a core routine prior, and that same exact thing after practice. And these kids, I had a kid show up like a minute before practice and then asked to leave a minute before the practice was done. So I'm just like, you have people who just come in at different times and have different priorities. But if you can get those habits ironed out at a young age, that's super important. And I promise you, it sucks now, but as you get older, you'll start realizing you're going to start having marginal gains over those people who probably don't have that awareness or don't even know that that's something they need to work on.
Omar, was that the snowboarder? Was that the snowboarder who had to leave early because they get those slopes on time? Okay.
No. I had another kid. I had another kid who shows up like 20 minutes early. He goes on a 20-minute run and is always the last person to be ready. I'm like, dude, why would you come here 20 minutes before everybody else and then go for a run and then you're late? It just doesn't make sense. These kids, man, I'm getting the worst kids over here.
Oh my gosh.
These guys. Man.
Oh boy.
Nothing I can do.
I am looking forward to these drone shots. If you only had Jersey kids, things would be going a lot better for you.
That's right.
So guys, we're going to be heading over into part 2, which is going to be on the TKI feed. Tori, Jill, is there anything, guys, you want to kind of wrap up here before we kind of move on to that thing? And then Tori, we're going to have you shout out that feed for anybody who's listening to this right now, who might not know where to reach it. Anything you guys want to wrap up?
Awesome. I would say that my last thing, like something that I think makes a good goalkeeper great, is just that mentality piece. We talked a lot about it in our first podcast back in season 2, but mental hustle, knowing who you are as a goalkeeper, knowing who you are as a person, and like taking care of, 1, your mental health, but 2, making sure that as you come into these sessions, like you have something that you're striving for, you have purpose, you have passion, and you have fun. Like you bring those things in, and like those are going to be your most consistent goalkeepers because everything becomes intentional, in my opinion.
Boom, mic drop. I have nothing to add.
Jill's got nothing to add. She's in the house now, so she's in a more comfortable position. Dog's licking her face. There's a lot going on. There's a lot going on there. Remember, guys, contact at insidethe18media.com if you have a guest suggestion or topic suggestion, at Goalkeeper Podcast on all social media platforms, at ProGK Academy _, at Saskia _Webber, at Michael Magid for comedy stuff. Guys, part 2 will be at the Keeper Institute. All right, we're out, guys. We'll see you on part 2. Later.
Welcome to the Keeper Institute podcast. My name is Tori Corsaro. I'm a strength and conditioning and goalkeeper coach here at the Keeper Institute and your host for today's show. The Keeper Institute is a unique goalkeeper training facility in New Jersey aimed at developing better goalkeepers and better people. On this podcast, we will be discussing all things goalkeeping, character development, and more. Hey, you guys, welcome back to another episode of the Keeper Institute podcast. Today, we are jazzed up because this is our second recording in a row because we're bringing you a really special episode where we're doing a crossover with everyone from inside the 18. So before you listen to this, rewind, go back and listen to that podcast so you can flow right into this. Podcast 1 with them, we talked a little bit about what makes a good goalkeeper great. And here we're about to talk about super strength. So if you have listened to our podcast before, you might have heard us bring on a couple of our pros and our goalkeepers at TKI to talk about their X factor, what makes them special. This is going to be similar, except we're going to talk about how we can help you find yours and why it's important.
All right.
Well done.
Yes, love that intro. That was solid. And
Thanks,
here comes
guys.
the music.
Honestly,
I can't do the theme song.
It's nice.
It's gonna be interesting to see
Jill,
Mike not
you
as a
don't
host.
compliment me once I do my intros. Everyone just gave me a really nice little bit of praise.
Come on. I was just like you. I thought you were gonna crack up halfway through because you had.
I'm just waiting for the whistling.
That's before. No, I'm just kidding. All right. So let's dive in, you guys. I'll start us off a little bit. For me, a super strength, when I hear someone talk about that, is like, what makes you special? What is it that when you go out on that field, it's evident for everyone around you that this is something you excel in? So, like I said in the previous podcast, we all have our differences. We all have our things that we are really great at, and we all have our weaknesses as well, which we'll touch on that later. But to me, a super strength is just what sets us apart. It's the thing that's going to maybe get us noticed. It's going to be the thing that we want to make sure we're continuing to make great about ourselves as a goalkeeper. And I think it's really important, especially from a young age, that a kid knows what it is, because more often than not, our kids could tell us what their weaknesses are, but they're not comfortable telling us what their super strengths are. So what do you guys think? What is a super strength to you? How do you think we can get kids to recognize their super strengths maybe earlier on?
I mean, first off, I want to say one thing right there, Tori, is that I love super strengths. And one of the things I love about TKI, and especially the podcast, is the little buzzwords, because you guys make them sound so exciting, and you make I don't want to say that they're like youth friendly, but they're like, like you feel it's such a positive energy, when I hear these little buzzwords and these little phrases that you guys have, these little quotes that you guys use at TKI and everything like that. It's just something I really want to praise you guys on, because I'm now excited because I want to think about like my own super strengths, and like, I think honestly, like in regards to like myself personally, and I think a lot of young goalkeepers out there can kind of, attest to this, who may not be the tallest or the most athletic of the goalkeepers out there, is listening and learning. Because there's a lot of goalkeepers out there that if they just listen to their coaches, listen to their teammates, and learn from their coaches and learn from their teammates, they would be 10 times better goalkeepers than they are right now.
That's your super strength?
I mean, look,
Yeah.
listen, I'm no Marvel Cinematic Universe Inhuman, clearly, okay?
What color cape is that?
Mike, you shot your shot and you airballed, man. My God.
I'm like, what?
Fine, I'm quick off my line. You happy? Jeez.
There we go. Thank you for saying something.
All right.
Sorry,
fine.
honestly, we wouldn't be offended if you cut out after the intro, that little segment that Mike said, cut it out, and then we'll continue from here. I'm okay with it. Saskia, what do you think? We get the majority rule, 2 out of 3. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm good. Should just be like, I'm quick off my line. That's the end of it when you edit it.
Yeah.
There we go.
There you go.
Okay, I can do that.
think?
I can do it again if you want.
What do
me
I think? That's
What do you for you?
For me? That's a loaded question. I mean, I think, oh God, how do you come off not sounding like an arrogant ass? I'm Jill's laughing. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know. I think that my presence, my confidence, my ability to shake things off, communication, I excelled at absolutely everything I could possibly try to excel at. I can tell you a weakness, but
not about the weaknesses. You gotta,
I know
your super strengths. And
I
you gotta
know my
own
super strengths. I own my super strengths, and I don't mean to say it's wrong to pat yourself on the back, but I know that I would definitely say my presence and my strengths and what I bring to the team, my communication. There was no doubt about that, and I'm very proud of that. And whether it's in practice or whether it's in a game.
Yeah, I remember watching you at Rutgers being like, oh my gosh, I'm afraid of her. And I was just in the stands, like your communication and presence it was unreal. Seriously, it was unreal. Like anything, and you would be able to like dominate your box because of that presence. And, everyone in the entire stadium could feel that.
Oh, thanks, Jill.
Yeah.
Good.
but now we need to know Jill's. We got 2 national team keepers here. Jeez Louise. Like, I mean, if anybody's going to be able to tell us some real super strengths, it's both of you 2 right here. Omar's super strength is going to be, the fact that he can manipulate it so he can be a chubby little kid that gets chipped over constantly over and over.
I was going to say it was chasing after the ice cream truck, but just stop. No, Jill,
Beat you
let's
to
hear
it.
When I played, and now that I'm a coach, I wish they were different. But my super strength when I played was definitely my technique. I was super technical, but that was also a very limiting factor for me because I needed things done a certain way. I needed coach to serve here, exactly here, for me to walk away from the session being like, oh, I improved or I felt better today, or I could perform on the weekend. And so it was a strength, but it was also my greatest weakness. And I think sometimes we have to be cautious of our super strengths not being also our demise. So if you're really good in possession, then that's awesome. But you also have to use it at the right times, right? Because if we try to always use that, then it becomes to our demise. Or for example, if you make a mistake in a game, but you're really good on dominating the goal area on flank services, and then you're like, I got to make up for that mistake and go win that ball to make up for the goal I just gave up, then obviously that's to your demise. So for me, it was my technique and that I cared more about everyone on my team more than anyone else. I really cared about my teammates, which was really a super strength for me because with the national team I was a third, so I was a locker room type of player, and if I didn't have that as a super strength, I'm not sure that I would have remained on the national team as long as I did. So yeah, as a coach though, I would say that, those are two great qualities to have, but there's so many other things. Like I would place bravery at the highest super strength on my list right now, today as a coach.
Absolutely, right on.
One thing I want to say about this, Tori, in regards to the super strength, topic is that a lot of times with the super strength, and we just recently had a Bundesliga coach on, and he was talking about one of the goalkeepers in the Bundesliga, and I don't want to throw the guy under the bus, so I'm not going to say his name or whatever.
I don't know, get through it because I want to hear Omar's, so come on.
But he said, but one of his super strengths was dropping line and retreating to line because he was such a great reactive goalkeeper, dropping deep. And because of that, because he had developed this belief in himself that he was so good at this, he couldn't recognize opportunities when he did have to come out and win that ball. Yeah. And we're talking about at the highest of levels here. We're talking about in the Bundesliga right here, So like Jill was saying, and my advice to any young goalkeepers out there listening to that is that, yes, be proud of your strength, but recognize the time and place to utilize your strength.
Absolutely.
See, I said something.
I don't know about you guys, but I feel like, Jill, that resonates with me so much because I think that our super strength can often be our demise. Like, it's like, I'm great at this, but almost to a detriment. Like, I know my personal super strength as a player was that I was so resilient and I was going to outwork anyone around me. And like, that became my own demise because often I was outworking everyone, air quotes, but I was so exhausted that when it came to game time, I probably wasn't playing my best. Or when we got into preseason, I was already burnt out, like that kind of deal. So like, it can quite often lead to that same thing where like I don't recognize when not to do my super strength and like achieve that balance.
Tori, I'm glad you brought that up right there because I'll share a story in regards to myself. Is that when I had a pro trial?
Omar.
Okay, fine. We'll get to Omar, but
I
never share stories.
Omar's.
I never share stories. Oh, we haven't
heard Omar's.
Oh wait, we haven't heard Omar's. Oh my gosh. Okay, never mind.
I mean, again, going on course with everyone saying about it, kind of leading to your demise. Sometimes I think one word that I would use is that it might sound a little bit off, but I was a pessimist. I think that was one of my biggest strengths is that I was a pessimist in terms of when where I guess we're playing defense, we're on the defensive end. Every single potential thing that the person on the ball could do or anything I could see with the runner, I always thought, what's the worst case scenario here and how am I going to act and how am I going to problem solve this? So I think it was always just pessimistic mentality of, okay, if my defender gets beaten behind, am I high enough to reach that ball? Am I on the front foot? Am I staggered? Okay, that ball's not coming through. That ball got played to the wing. If I shift, am I looking at my far side? What if my right back doesn't check his shoulder? Okay, maybe I need to communicate that. So it was just
so you're not getting caught off guard.
Exactly, but it was constant problem solving. And it goes back to, we talked about it a few episodes back, Mike, about my ADHD. And the doctor always said, like, hey, if you feel like you're getting lost in the game, you're looking at ice cream trucks or you're looking at the guy, the certain cars or whatever, find a way to stay in tune. So for me, it was always communication. then that communication compounded, okay, visually, how can I see what I see and then communicate that to my defenders? Okay, instead of being so negative with my communication and so frustrated, how can I tone it down a little bit so that I actually say less, but that it actually means more to my defenders and they want to work for me? So you start figuring out, when I say pessimistic, it's more of like you're looking at potential problems and how do you solve that? You talk, I listen to Gary Vee all the time, and I'm sure you guys, if you guys ever listen to him, but he talks about how as a CEO of his company, he's a fireman. He's putting out fires left and right, and he's trying to, help situations get better. So for me, it was always understanding what's the potential that could happen, how do I problem solve, and how do I do it in a short span.
But
so
see,
for me, I think that's why
that's a great trait, because because when it comes to communication, when it comes to organization, goalkeepers that are listening out there, because you're a step ahead. So you're looking at the field and you're looking at the situation. How can this break down? Like, is my weak side covered? Is, and you're a step ahead. And I, like, when I talk to my goalkeepers and stuff like that, I'm like, when I say I'm good at communication, it doesn't mean I'm telling Mia to shoot, okay? Because she's 100 yards away from me, and I'm damn sure not listening to me, okay? That's not communication. Communication is, okay, we're in the attacking third, right? So I could be watching the planes landing at JFK, which I used to do. So no, I know all the tail colors. So I like KLM, like, Qantas, everything. So, but what can I do right now to keep myself attached? And it's actually a great thing, Omar, because I'm going to organize my defense quietly, just subtly. I'm not yelling at everybody. Hey, Brandy, check out, the weak side, or Carla, watch this, or whatever. So if there's a breakdown on the other side of the field, my team's already organized and I'm already thinking ahead. Yeah. And so I think that's a great attribute, because technically you're the last line of defense. And like I say, first line of attack, first pass on attack. And so, but that's a great attribute. And
Thank you.
It can be to your detriment at times, but at the same time, over organization to me I would like that quality, period.
Yeah, we talk about proactive goalkeeping, and I think that's another one of those words that when you hear it, you go, okay, that for me at least, I always knew exactly what that was. I had acne as a kid too, so I knew what proactive was. So like from different sides of things. But I think when it comes to even when your team is on the offensive,
Can
right?
we just get a plug for proactive?
Oh my God. We gotta have pictures. We gotta have pictures. By the way, guys, if you go on the internet, there is an interview with Omar when he was like 15 years old.
For proactive?
No. Should have been. How it went, how it's going, how it's going.
No, I think that's a great trait as a goalkeeper to be proactive and not reactive, and how.
Yes, and so just one thing again, just to kind of give a visual to what I mean by that is not one time, it happened a lot, but for example, your team it's tied 0-0, understanding of what the score is, and your team is getting ready for a set piece or a corner kick or whatever. Like that needs to be the first step in terms of proactiveness of like, okay, if I were to think of the worst case scenario here, if it's a one-on-one, let's say I shoot everybody up and I have someone on top of their 18, but then between my center back or my last defender and my guy on the 18, there's only one, there's a striker or two strikers there. What can happen if that ball gets clear, the goalkeeper catches it, and then now it's a 1v1? And what if that guy has speed? So now you're asking yourself all these questions in a matter of 2-3 seconds, and then that leads to your communication. So I maybe pessimism is not the right word, but the proactive side of the game and understanding that what could potentially go wrong may go wrong. And if it does, and you're not the one who's communicating that, you're going to be accountable. And the last thing I'll say is if any young kids or if they watch basketball, Draymond Green of the Warriors, someone did a breakdown of his last week. It was 2 seconds or 3 seconds left in the game, and the other team missed the shot. But before, he was calling out every single potential play to his defenders. Hey, if I go here and they want us to separate, I'm going to go with your guy, you go with my guy. Then he communicated to the other guy, hey, if he comes in back screens, I'm going to take your guy, you come with my guy. And every single thing that he said ended up happening, and they missed the shot. It could have been down if you're just watching the game. It could have been, hey, he missed a shot, whatever. But if you actually are able to see how he communicates before the ball is even inbounded, then you start realizing, oh my God, there are people with high IQs that are affecting the game way more than we could ever conceptualize.
Right, but I'm going to say this, that there's a point, and I don't know where Jill went. there's a point that to your detriment,
Sure. Moderation and anything.
Not knowing when to shut up and just save the ball. And what I mean by that is we have kids that are over communicating and over organizing, that, you got that kid and the ball's coming down to the inside the box and it's going to the end line and they're like coming to their near post and their arm's still pointing this way. Watch weak side. Even that body language, even that means you're not ready for whatever happens on that ball. And there comes a time when you've organized, you've done it. Now it's time to do your job. Now it's time to focus on the shot that could happen at any time, or on the play that could happen at any time. And if the weak side isn't organized by now and they're not marked up and you get scored back there, then you have a conversation with your defense, right? You should have already told them, you should have already said, so-and-so mark up weak side. Now I have to get my little zone on, and now I have to deal with what's going on around the box and deal with me.
Yeah.
Other than what's happening on the ball immediately, whether it's pressure the ball or step or something like that. So,
Yeah. I've had that before, where I've the cross is coming in and I'm still talking. I'm like, oh my God.
Do you get that, Jill? Do you get that with little kids? They're still trying to organize. They're like, oh, don't do this. And here comes the ball. And you're like, stop talking. Play the ball.
Absolutely.
And it's hard because you ask them to do one thing. You ask them to organize, but they have to understand when, where, what time, and when to shut it off.
That's what I mean, Tori. Tori, that's what I mean right there in regards to understanding when to utilize your strength and when not to utilize your strength. Because communication, I wouldn't say is my number one strength. I thought I was decent at communication, but I can't tell you how many times I got scored on because I was doing that. Because I was so focused on so-and-so wasn't on the back post. And because of that, I'm panicking about this. Meanwhile, so-and-so scoring on the near post.
Be a split second behind. So it could be so simple as going and saying, Jen, watch the far post. Boom, that's it. Yep. When that already should have been organized, already should have been done. And now you shouldn't be saying anything other than what's going on right in front of you on the ball. And so that split second, that's your goal.
For sure. And that's why it's important, that we know our super strengths, but also I think that this is going to be really helpful for people, because it's going to be okay, I am allowed to identify something I'm good at. It's not bad. It's not conceited. It's not cocky to be yeah, I have these things I'm good at. That's okay. One, but two, it's going to show these kids and these coaches who are coaching goalkeepers or anyone else for that matter, that just because you're really good at this something doesn't mean that it's the mold for all the time. It's just what you're really good at. It's just what we need to exploit when the opportunity's on. So one thing I've been saying over and over again to my kids is, this is a tool for your toolkit. This isn't your all the time. Just because I'm saying, hey, let's work on breaking pressure with a forwards touch doesn't mean that every time you should break pressure with a forwards touch. It's not always going to work. So I think it's really important to, one, identify, two, exploit when the time's right, and three, recognize that you can easily let it become, a detriment to you as well. But before we finish this up, I do have one last question, and maybe everyone can give me one thing they think kids can do. But what do you think they can do to identify it? Let's say that you're working with a kid, we'll go with a median age of 15, 16, and they come to you and they're I don't know what my super strength is. What should I consider my it factor? What's about me is going to get me looks or get me noticed? What would you say they could do to find that?
I mean, look, one thing I will say right now, and it's funny that you say that, Tori, because I was just thinking in regards to with you and Jill and all the players that you come across at TKI. One of the number one issues I've had with young goalkeepers is them misidentifying their super strength. Mm-hmm. They think this is their strength, but in reality, something is their strength, which means that they're not conscious of what makes them unique and what makes them a great player. So I personally think one thing that you should do is kind of have an open conversation with them and say, what do you enjoy doing? Because a lot of times the things that they enjoy doing are things that they're very good at. Okay. That's just the truth. I enjoy doing comedy because I'm mediocre at it. So that's why I enjoy doing comedy.
That was funny.
Yeah, there you go. So it's timing. I enjoy timing. A lot of times if a kid's slow, they're not going to say that they love sprinting, So find out what they like. And then you're going to start recognizing, oh my gosh, the reason you like this is because you're really good at this, man. You know why you love coming out for crosses? Because you are so explosive coming up, in the air, and your timing is so good. I think that might be your strength, dude. And they goes, oh my gosh, you're right. Then they get excited because not only do they enjoy it, but now they look at it as that's their super ability. That's their superhuman skill that no other goalkeeper out there has. And again, like Dan Abrahams has always talked about from a sports psych standpoint, is that if you really believe something, you will manifest it into a reality.
Oh, I'm trying to believe I'm going to win the Mega Millions tonight. That's not going to manifest into reality. Like, what? No,
Omar manifested the ability to get that.
You. I'm just messing with you. Stop, leave Omar alone. It was me. I'm sticking up for you, Omar.
I know. I'm less scared of Omar than you. So
I'm just messing around. You know me.
All right, what do you guys think? Yeah, I was pushing like maybe college age even.
I think for me with college age, like I know as a coach I can identify what their super strengths are.
Mm-hmm.
And I always say, perfect this. This is God, you have this and it's solid. So let's perfect it. So we're going to keep working on it. So you have a super strength, and whether if it's a physical super strength or whatever, perfect it. It takes honing. It takes maintenance to keep doing it. And so, yes, acknowledge it, but you got to keep up on that. You got to still, whether it's like Warren doing like a certain distribution or whatever, perfect that so on point that everybody knows that when you get the ball in your hands, dude, you can put it on anybody's body on a dime, on a laser, because she can. And so perfect it. And we're going to keep training it and perfect it. And now we're going to focus on the things that you're not great on. And we're going to try to get them as close to that perfection as we can. But I'm never going to say, you got this, you're done. Whatever, we don't need to work on this. You always need to still hone those skills. You work to perfect that. You work to become this. That takes maintenance, and you have to keep it up.
Love it. What about you, Omar? What do you think? How would you coach a kid through finding this?
I think I've learned in my life nowadays, when you're least looking for something and you kind of just do the little things right every single day, that eventually something adds up and it becomes clear towards the end. Whether that's relationships, you're just, laying foundation every single day. You're treating them with respect. You're doing little acts of kindness for them. And eventually you start realizing who are your real friends, who's going to reciprocate that. You can't answer that right away, but over time, things will kind of gradually progress. But like we always talk about, do the little things right. And like Saskia says, you're not going to master something right away, but little by little, day by day, keep on adding something to that house. Keep on building little pieces. And eventually you're going to get to a point you realize, oh, wow, like Peter Schmeichel, damn, I can throw the ball 70 yards. Sheesh, I didn't do that when I was younger, but because I just kept on working on the technique, I realized that I could throw the ball further than anybody. And then, we're talking about earlier about in the last episode, the crossover episode, about how in Jersey, it's 4 seasons, right? So then sometimes you're playing different sports all the time. And again, I throw Peter Schmeichel out there because that star jump is so famous from handball. And it's just you don't know what little things you're learning from different sports that are going to you can implement. And then that's something that people always say, wow, okay, they're able to translate a lot of different things from different sports into this, the hand-eye coordination from baseball, the way they scoop the ball on those, as a shortstop, whatever it is. But I think over time you figure it out. I think the best thing I would tell them is just be curious. Hey, you're not going to find it right away, but just be curious. Every single day you do something, figure out why you're doing it. Why is my coach telling me to do this? And I think for me, that was the biggest part why I feel like I am where I am now in terms of why I love coaching so much, is the curiosity aspect is just so fun. It's never ending. Yes, it could be to my demise at some point because I overthink things, but I think the recipe for anything good is at least showing awareness that you know what's going on here, and then being curious to find out more reasoning as to why this technique is taught a certain way. And then once you realize that's the mechanics and that's how you're supposed to do it, now you can add your own little flair to it and say, yeah, that's the way they do it, but I can do it a little bit better if I tweak my arm here. So then just adds the filming and adds all these different aspects. So for me, it's just be curious, be patient, and then just be persistent. It's not going to happen overnight, but over time, you'll start to know as those habits are kind of flushed out what sticks and what doesn't.
I love
Figured
that.
out, I haven't
Really
figured
good.
out how my backstroke has helped yet, but I'll figure it out one day.
All right,
you're
Jill, bring us
breathing.
home.
No, I was just gonna say, I went back or earlier I said I wish that my super strength was bravery, because I think when you're brave, you have created space to try, to explore, to experiment and figure out, like going off what Omar said, the curiosity piece. And you have that space to explore what you're great at and making it even better and figuring out when you can apply it and when you can't. But if you're having a really difficult time figuring it out, I would ask 3 people in your inner circle, hey, what do you think I excel in? What areas of the game do you think I really excel in? Like, and ask your coach, ask your goalkeeper coach, ask your parents who don't even know what offside is, ask them too. Like, hey, from a very outsider's opinion, what do you think that I really, really excel in? And I think you'll find it and you'll be able to hone it.
Jill, it's
Yeah.
funny you say that, because like when I was asked and I said what I thought it was, and when you came back with your comments on that, like, is this just me? Is this like, I think, listen to all kids out there and parents, like, I think, like, I'm going to say what I think, what I've believed over all these years of playing. I don't know I'm not sure if that's what everybody else sees and stuff. And for you to come back and say what you said, not that I need the justification, I mean, but yeah, that's awesome. The comments you made about being in the stands and that presence and everything. I'm like, right, that was my strong point, and that I was solid on saying that. And for you to say that is, to me, is awesome. Like, inner circle wise, and that, and not that, listen, goalkeepers out there and parents, not that you have to have the outside validation, but from coaches and from people you respect, that's awesome. Like, period. That's awesome. We're on the same page and I love it. And that makes me feel good at 49 years old. It makes me, yeah, I said it. It makes me feel good, So
I love it. I'm giving it snaps. It's awesome.
I wish I could. I can't snap my fingers. I can't do it. I've never been able to do it my entire life. So can we do an entire podcast on how to teach me how to snap my fingers?
You got it.
Oh.
All right,
Tori,
you guys.
I just want to say
awesome.
one last thing. Sorry, I say one last thing.
Yeah, hit it.
I think for me, again, we talk about patience, is as a coach, when you step into it, remember that you shouldn't look at the goalkeeper you're working on as a reflection of what your super strength was. And I think for me, that has been a good awareness point. I understand that now, but it's given me more patience of like, it's a process for me to get to where I am. So trying to instill the way I saw the position, the way I played the position into my goalkeepers. Of course, I want to show them some of my identity and why I coach the way I coach, or why I teach the way I teach. But at the end of the day, it's very, very important to remember that you're not trying to force mold these kids, but more so guided discovery. Let them find
absolutely.
let them find their own identity. And I think we've said it all the time. Is like, some kids may be able to find solutions to the problems you're giving them better than you can help them find solutions to the problems you're giving them.
No, absolutely, Omar. My superpower is not necessarily my goalkeeper superpower. So figure out what that is and help them make it bigger.
Yeah, that's huge. That's a really, really great point to bring up and to like address towards coaches too, because I think that's sometimes where it can be like we can miss the mark. Like, it's like, I want you to understand this because I have all this knowledge, but they don't need all this knowledge right now. They need what they need to take the one next step in their journey. So I think that is huge and that is incredible. Like I was saying, this has been awesome. I love this crossover idea. I love getting to, work with like-minded people and kind of share some more creative ideas on both coasts here, East and West. The fans, I'm going to let Mike do the handles because I don't know everyone's handles by heart, but ours is just at the Keeper Institute. You know where to reach us. We're always available to you via email as well. So head over to our website to email Jill or myself with any questions, comments, concerns. And Mike, take it away. Tell them where they can find you guys.
Really quick. You guys are awesome. Jersey, I love it. Anytime I can get on, because I'm a Jersey girl day in and day out, and you know that. I can't wait to get out of this pandemic and get back to Jersey and come out and work with you guys and see you guys. 100%.
Come visit us anytime.
You got it.
I just can't wait to see Omar. I want to see those pictures of Omar in the baby's room, just sleeping in the same room. I think that would that's the moment that we all. Oh my God, there he is. Hey Levi, hey Levi, how are you? Hello,
What's
hello.
up? Look at that smile.
Levi,
Smile for you.
Look at
Oh
that
my-
smile. I
That's
love it.
unbelievable. That's unbelievable. Well, I was just distracted. It was the same thing as when KK.
No, just call it out.
Just call it. Okay.
Just
All right,
let
guys.
them have their moment, please.
All right. You can reach out to us at Goalkeeper Podcast on all social media platforms or contact at insidethe18media.com. Individually, you can reach out to Omar Zeenni at ProGKAcademy _ Saskia Webber at Saskia _Webber, and myself at Michael Magid Magid. And that's it.
Awesome.
Guys,
Well,
awesome.
thank you so much, you guys. We'll catch you later.
Catch
All
you
right.
later. Thanks, guys.
Bye, guys.